Good morning students, welcome to the 8th standard social science class. In previous class we have learned meaning of sources, types of sources, written literature, native and foreign literature. So today's class we shall learn about oral literature, archaeological sources, inscriptions, coins, monuments and other ruins. Literature. Oral literature means the folk story, folk songs, folk legends, ballads and other that pass one from one person to another by word of mouth. Here oral literature means the stories, songs or legends it will pass one person to another person. Stories. Folk stories are related to many storytelling traditions including fables, myths and fairy tales. Example stories from Panchatantra, Hitopadesha, Arabian Nights, etc. Folk songs. Folk songs are generally called as Janapada Gite. A folk song is a traditional song that is typical of a particular community or a nation. Folk legends. The local mythological stories are called as folk legends. Ballads. A ballad is a long song or a poem which tells a story in a simple language. Since the beginning of human life, human beings are passing on their experience in the form of story, songs, and ballads orally from generation to generation. The folk people have created ballads about their local heroes. There are ballads on Kumararama, the Nayakas of Chitradurga, Kempegoda, Tippu Sultan, Sangoli Rayana, Kittura Chennamma, Sindhura Lakshmana, Meadows Taylor, and others. Here, Kumararama was the son of Kampila Raja, chief of the province of Kumaradurga in Bellary, Karnataka. Destiny plays a cruel part in his life. Despite such a personal crisis, Kumararama does not compromise on his values and fights the enemies of his province. He dies on the battlefield to save his province from Tughlaq's army. So he is still remembered and worshipped in every part of Karnataka. Next, the Nayakas of Chitradurga. Vanake Obava. As we know about Vanake Obava, she was a brave woman who fought the forces of Hyder Ali single-handedly with the pistol in the kingdom of Chitradurga of Karnataka. Her husband was a guard of watchtower in the rocky fort of Chitradurga. In the state of Karnataka, she is celebrated along with Keladi Chennamma and Kittura Chennamma as the foremost women warriors, patriots. Many poems return bravery of Vanake Obava. Kempegoda. Kempegoda, he was a chieftain under the Vijayanagara Empire. The Bangalore city was founded by Kempegoda in 1537. Next, Tipu Sultan. He was also known as Tiger of Mysore. He was the ruler of the kingdom of Mysore. He is known for his bravery and victory in several wars and the sacrifices he made to save his land from foreign invaders. Next, Sangoli Rayanna. Sangoli Rayanna, he was an Indian military chief officer and warriors in Kittura princely state of Karnataka. He was the army chief of the kingdom of Kittur, ruled at that time by Rani Chennamma and for the British East India Company till his death. Kittur Rani Chennamma. She is more famous as a freedom fighter. She was an Indian freedom fighter and Rani of Kittur, a former princely state in Karnataka. She is one of the first women freedom fighter to have fought against the British rule in India. Next, Sindhuru Lakshmana. Sindhuru Lakshmana was a revolutionary Indian freedom fighter who engaged in violent freedom movement against the British colonial government in India. He was born in 1898 in Sindhura village, which is now in Jet Taluk of Sangli district in Maharashtra state. Last, Meadows Taylor, he was an administrator in British India and a novelist made notable contributions to public knowledge of South India. He encouraged improvement of agriculture, opened up more job opportunities. He was known to spend his own money for the welfare of the people. Not only these local heroes, many local heroes they sacrifices their life to save their country. Legends means the local mythological stories. Every place will have their own legends. There are legends behind the names and places like Shravana Shravana, it is in Hassan district of Karnataka. It is famous for its collection of Jaina temples. The famous one is Gommateshwara statue. The Gommateshwara statue is built in the reign of Rajamalla IV. He was the king of Ganga dynasty. Next, Bengaluru. Bangalore got its name from the word Bendakalu, which means boiled beans in the local language Kannada. King Veeraballala of the Vijayanagara kingdom was once lost in a forest and happened to stumble upon a lonely cottage. So an old woman that lived there could offer the starving king only boiled bendakalu, and the place came to be known as Bendakaluru. So later came to be known as Bengaluru. The present day city was designed by Kempe Gowda in the year 1537. Next is Koppala. Koppala, it is in Karnataka. It is also known as Jaina Kashi, means sacred place of Jains. Even Mahamaya temple at Kukunuru village of Koppala has many legends and tales associated with it. Pattadakallu. Pattadakallu is a small town in the Bagalkot district of North Karnataka. It is famous for its UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987 and also famous for temples. Gokarna. Gokarna, it is in Uttarakhand district. Gokarna found in epics such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. The sage Samvartakeshwara wrote a detailed book on this ancient, holy and religious place called as Gokarna. So many temples also we can see here. The famous temple Mahabaleshwara temple, Mysore. Mysore, it is famous for Mysore Palace, Dasara festival and Chamundeshwari temple. So similarly, every village and town have their own legend. Archaeological sources. There are 4 types in archaeological sources. Those are monuments, coins, inscriptions, other archaeological remains. Archaeological sources are available not only on the surface of the earth but also hidden deep in the depth of the earth. Here, generally, archaeological source means what? It is nothing but the study of the societies and peoples of the past by examining the remains of their buildings, tools, and other objects. Here, the hidden things in the earth are dug out by using scientific methods. This process is called as excavation. Excavation is nothing but digging the earth, what we are getting the things. That on the basis of that we are coming to know about the history. Harappan civilization came to be light only due to the process of excavation. During excavation, ruins of buildings, inscriptions, coins, terracotta pieces. Terracotta means a hard baked reddish brown clay. Bangles, seals, beads, bone pieces, metal and others have been found. These are analyzed by applying various scientific methods to understand the life of the people of those times. Here, for example, Harappan civilization. How the archaeologists they discovered this? Here what happened? The ancient sites of the Harappa were discovered by the engineers when the railway lines were being laid. When they were doing the railway lines, it is 150 years ago in the Sindhu Valley region of Punjab. They thought that it was a mound made up of the excellent brick. So they started to use those bricks for the construction of the railway lines. In this way, many houses which had been buried under the soil were destroyed. So archaeologists took up the research in this area. They were convinced that it was an ancient city. So they were called that Harappan civilization. So these cities are said to be 4600 years old. So like that, the archaeologists discovered the Harappan city. Inscription mean engraved writing. Inscriptions are written on stones, rock, metal, ivory, terracotta and other materials that last longer. Inscriptions are more reliable as these have a direct relationship with then events. Here inscription earlier time they used to write or they used to engraved on that walls, stones, rock, metals. Even the earlier the kings, if they wanted to say any rules and regulation, they used the inscriptions. The spread of the religious messages, even the king's achievements, they for that purpose they were using the inscriptions. Example, Ashoka's inscriptions are the earliest inscription found in India. Most of his inscriptions are in Brahmi script. Their language is Prakrit. Here, among all the kings, Ashoka used inscription. He used more inscription. So, he is called as the father of inscription. And it was in Prakrit language. At that time, Prakrit it was the common man's language. Means ordinary people's, they were using this language. So easily whatever the king you wanted to say, they were understanding. Either the extent of his empire, either the rules and regulation, even the message of his towards his religion. So it should be easy to him to spread his religion, that is the Buddhist religion. So like that, inscriptions helped a lot to the kings. Thousands of inscriptions are found in Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Sanskrit, Prakrit language, as you can see in the pictures. Samudragupta's Allahabad pillar inscription. This inscription was composed by Samudragupta's court poet and minister Harisena, and he mentioned in that about the conquest of Samudragupta and boundaries of Gupta period. Next, Immadi Pulkeshi's Aihole inscription. Aihole inscription was written by the Ravikirti. He was the court poet of Chalukyan king Pulkeshi II. In this inscription, he mentioned about the achievements of the Pulkeshi II, defeat of Harshavardhana and victory of Chalukyas on Pallavas. Kharvela's Hathigumpa inscription and other inscription portrays the military achievement of the rulers. Hathigumpa inscription from Udayagiri near Bhubaneswar in Odisha was inscribed by Kharvela, emperor of Kalinga. This inscription mentioned about achievements of kings and welfare activities of the king, etc. Last one, the Uttara Meruru inscription. Uttara Meruru inscription was issued by Parantaka I. It narrated the rural administration of the Chola kings. So apart from this, many political, social, cultural, economic, educational, religious aspects are reflected in these inscriptions. Here, inscription not only it gives the information about the extent of the kingdom, the achievements of the kings, even the welfare of activities of the king, but also the social, cultural, economic, educational and religious aspects also reflected in the inscription. The coins. Though the coins are small in shape, they contain many important aspects such as the economic, political, social, cultural achievements of the kings, even the passion of the kings towards the art, literature, architecture and music. Like that, we'll come to know the information about the past from the coins. Coins are helpful in understanding the geographical extent of the rural kingdom. Who minted the coins? We come to know the kingdom from where to where it extended. They also aid us in knowing the language of administration. We come to know the language of administration of the kingdom. Either it is Persian, Sanskrit, Arabic, etc. Titles that the kings possess, the titles of the kings, their religion, means which religion the kings they were following, economic condition of the times, economic condition of the kings, which type of coins they minted, silver, gold, copper, etc. Like that we come to know about the kingdoms information by the coins. Samudragupta had minted 7 different type of gold coins. He was not just a conqueror but a great poet and a lover of music too. His passion for music we can see in the gold coins which depict him playing on the veena. And he had conducted Ashwamedha Yaga also. Here, Ashwamedha Yaga, as the name suggests, is a horse sacrifice ritual. It was used by the kings to prove their supremacy. A horse with some guards of the king was left to wander. If someone dared to catch the horse, then it's a challenge to the king, and the king had to defeat him and let the horse free again to roam. Gautamaputra Shatakarni got the name of Nahapana erased on his coins and engraved his name on them. This supports the view that Gautamiputra had defeated Nahapana. Here, Nahapana, he was a king of Shaka dynasty. He was defeated by Gautamiputra Shatakarni. So, for the memory of his achievement, Gautamiputra Shatakarni erased the name of Nahapana on his coin. The availability of Roman coins in Bengaluru proves the fact that this region had trade link with Romans 2000 years back. Monuments are the major sources to write history. As you can see in the picture, palaces, temples, forts and pillars etc. are the monuments only. Mehroli Iron Pillar and Vijayapura's Whispering Gol Gumbaj are the evidence of the maturity of the science and technical knowledge. Mehroli Iron Pillar, it was constructed by King Chandragupta II and it is in Delhi. And Vijayapura's Whispering Gol Gumbaj, Vijayapur it is famous for its historical monument Gol Gumbaj. So these two we can say it is the best example of science and technical knowledge at that time. Shah Jahan Taj Mahal tell the story of love for his wife Mumtaz. Chittora's Vijayastambha Victory Pillar tells the victory of Rana Kumbha. As you can see in the pictures, the cave pictures and engravings of Elephanta, Ellora and Ajanta narrate the mastery over painting and sculpture during their time. The temples of Aihole and Pattadakallu explain the evolution of Indian temple architecture. Evolution means the development of Indian temple architecture. The best temples in the Chalukyan styles are in Aihole and Pattadakallu. So Aihole was one of the cradles of temple architecture in India. The monument of Nalanda and the architecture of madrasas built by Gawan in Bidar narrate the importance given to education during those times. Nalanda is famous all over the world for the ancient international monastic university established in 5th century BC, which taught Vedas, logic, grammar, medicine, etc. It is in Bihar state. Muhammad Gawan, he was a prime minister in the court of Bahmani Sultan Muhammad Shah III. He built a great university in Bidar which is known as Muhammad Gawan Madrasa. The fort of Srirangapatna explains the accomplishment in the area of defense technology. By this we come to know how they were protecting their kingdom by the attack of enemies. Thus the monument throw light on the contemporary religious aspects, technology, economic growth, scientific knowledge and creativity achieved. So by this we can say monument also give more information for the study about the past, about their religious life, about their how they use the technology, about their economic growth, even the scientific knowledge. The best example for that is Gol Gumbaj and Taj Mahal. Based on the various pieces of terracotta, as I said earlier, terracotta means hard baked reddish brown clay, bangles, beads and seal procured during the examination. One can understand the socio-cultural, economic, political and religious life of the people. Here, the things whichever the earlier people they used, by that also we come to know about their social, cultural and economic life of the people. Buddha Stupa came to be light during the excavation at Sannati in Yadgiri district and Rajaghatta of Doddaballapur Taluk. In these two places, Buddha Stupas we got. Arikamedu, it is a port in ancient time. So when the archaeologists they did the excavation, they got the Roman coins in the Arikamedo port. So by that they come to know that the South India, it is having contact with it have a trade contact with the Roman Empire through sea route. So like that, the remains found at excavations tell many things that were lost over a period of time. Carbon dating or radiocarbon dating is a method used to date material that once exchanged carbon dioxide with atmosphere. By measuring the amount of carbon 14 left in the organism, it's possible to work out how old it is. The method was developed in the late 1940s at the University of Chicago by Willard Libby. Carbon 14, radioactive carbon. This should be done only to the biological fossils, tree, birds, plants and animals. So in every being, the carbon 14 and carbon 12 will be present in equal amounts. How means the plants absorb carbon dioxide during the photosynthesis and taking carbon 14 which is there in the atmosphere. So this carbon 14 is taken by animals and humans through the food chain. But after the death of the living beings, the carbon 12 remains constant, but carbon 14 start losing its volume, means carbon 14 start to decreasing. Carbon 14 has a half-life of 5730 years. By measuring the amount of carbon 14 in a sample and comparing it to a fresh sample, scientists can determine its age. So this method is called as radioactive carbon or carbon 14 dating method.